Hello and welcome back to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about the recently released books. Welcome back. Again, this is Ray Walters. Today's featured story starts where trust is supposed to be strongest inside the hospital and then asks a chilling question. What happens when the systems designed to help patients become the perfect place to hide fraud? In Coded, we meet Dr. Joseph Iannarelli, a chief of staff haunted by a surgical loss and worn down by waste and unnecessary testing. But the deeper he looks, the clearer it becomes that healthcare fraud isn't just paperwork anymore. It's gone digital, it's profitable, and it can be deadly. When his research or search for answers collides with a powerful Russian figure connected to diagnosis codes and international influence, Joe, his Russian wife, and a friend are pulled into a cross-border chase where telling the truth could cost them everything. Our guest brings a rare combination of first-hand medical experience and story-driven momentum, and he's made it clear that the medical details and even the scenes set in Russia are grounded in reality. Let's welcome the author of Coded, Dr. David J. Sand. Hi, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ray. Great to be here.
The pleasure is ours. It's such a privilege to have you today in this episode and to talk about your newly published book. By the way, this came out in January, so congratulations in getting this book out.
Thank you.
Is this your first book so far?
Yeah, this is my first book. I've done a lot of medically related writing, but this is my first book.
And it's fiction.
It is fiction. Yep.
All right. Okay. All right. So, what was the first spark for Coded? Was it a headline, a real world frustration, or a single what if moment?
Well, we were talking a little bit earlier, Ray. It actually started as a textbook. It was going to be an introduction for
Mhm.
other physicians who were moving from clinical practice to the business side of medicine. And the
Okay.
more I wrote, I started putting in personal stories to illustrate various aspects, and it became more of a collection of stories and vignettes.
Mm.
Eventually, I decided to turn it into a thriller.
I did come across books and movies, especially that is within the genre of medical thriller, and it's fascinating. It always puts me at the edge of my seat. um Doctor, this main character in your book, Dr. Joseph Iannarelli, begins the story carrying the weight of a patient dying on the table. How did you want that moment to shape who he is, who this Dr. Joseph is, for the rest of the book?
And again, speaking from my own personal experience, when there's an unexpected death, you're really shaken to your core,
Mm.
particularly as a surgeon. If that death occurs on the table, um, it really is it's a horrible moment. It shakes your confidence. It shakes who you are and why you do what you do. So to start with a family friend who dies unexpectedly, this is a very traumatic moment for Dr. Joe.
Joe believes quality hair care is a right, but he's surrounded by overspending and unnecessary testing. What kinds of conversations did you want this tension to spark in readers?
At first, it's just awareness. Following awareness is accountability, and after that, then it's okay to ask why. Why this test? Why are why are you saying these things?
Mm,
Um, there's so many teachable moments in
okay.
healthcare, and this goes back to the original roots of the book, and originally as a textbook for doctors who are making the transition.
Okay. Um, so the fraud in your story, has moved into the digital world. What felt most believable or most alarming to you about that shift?
Well, for years, healthcare reimbursement has all been based on codes and transmission of these codes, and um, it really has been the money aspect of healthcare has been digital for a very long time, and the folks who are able to capture those data are the ones who really control where the money goes.
Okay. There's this another character in your book, Alexander Ivanov. This character is positioned with influence around diagnosis codes. Why did you choose that particular world as the leverage point for the conspiracy?
Well, it's like when they asked Willie Sutton, "Why do you rob banks?" And he answered, "Well, that's where the money is." Um, Alexander got involved in this because that's where the healthcare money is, and he was able to insinuate himself to get on the inside, and see what was going on. In
All right.
fact, the healthcare fraudsters know the rules probably better than the people who even wrote them, and that's in real life.
Right, because in order for you to take advantage of these rules, you must study it and check for loopholes.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. When Joe lands in Alexander's crosshairs, the danger escalates fast. So, my question here is, how did you balance the thriller pace with the medical details so one never buried the other? Because sometimes um, we writers or authors would somehow kind of like lose that balance.
Well, it's a balance that I tried to remain aware of through the process. It's very easy for me to write the medical part of the story. It's who I am, it's what I know, it's what I did, and I wanted to make sure that it didn't become too technical or too overbearing. So while the medical part overlaid the entire story, I really focused on keeping it fast paced, keeping tension, keeping suspense, and frankly, making it a fun read.
And that's the beauty when when there's a fictional story written by someone who is in the field, and this is a medical thriller. So if your book becomes a movie, uh, you know, who knows, right? But if your book becomes a movie and you have scenes there taken directly off of your book, and say it's a surgical scene or something similar, would the readers or viewers, would they be able to say that, yeah, that's an accurate uh, uh, portrayal of or process? You know what I
Yeah,
mean, right?
yeah, I do, and throughout the entire book, I really made sure that the details were correct. Again, I spent 12 years, actually longer than that, um, 16, 18 years in the operating room. So, that part was easy. I I lived it. I knew it.
Yeah, yeah,
It was personal experience. But some of the other details, for instance, the jet that Alexander's fixer
yeah.
flew from New Jersey to France. I had to make sure that the range of that jet actually was capable of making the trip. I had to make sure that the runways at the airports where they were taking off and landing were long enough for that jet.
To accommodate the jet.
Even
Yeah.
where even one of the aspects of the scene in the jet, I had learned from overhearing a couple of private pilots on one of my trips.
Uh,
So yeah, I wanted to make sure, and in fact, my book's been read by a couple of docs who commented, "That's really accurate." And my response was, "Well, of course."
it's quite important because if it's a book or if it's a movie, viewers, readers like myself, we would both want to get the suspense piece of the thriller as well as the substance. So um, I'm glad. I mean, for those who are interested to read the book, they'll find themselves in real life situations when it's not just something that's a figment of imagination or something that only happens in movies, and that's the substance part, and I do like it. I did enjoy reading your book. So
Well, thank you.
Joe, the character here, Dr. Joe, doesn't do this alone. What did you want his Russian wife to contribute that Joe simply couldn't bring to the mission by himself?
Well, part of it is uh, it's not exactly like, but Nick and Nora Charles had a great interplay in the Thin
Mm,
Man movies, in those stories, and to have them play off each other, I thought would be a lot of fun. Additionally, Lena anchors the story in Russia, in the city of Astrakhan. So, again, when we get back to accuracy and reality, those scenes are places where I've been, things that
okay.
I've seen. Um, and yeah, and of course, Lena contributes in ways that Dr. Joe never could. Her own finance background and her ability with data sheets and numbers really allow him to follow through on his investigation. So for a lot of reasons, it was fun to have the interplay between Dr. Joe and his wife Lena.
Uh, you take the story into Russia. What did you want the setting to do in the book besides, look interesting on the page?
Well, I mean, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it Dr. Joe and his friend Admiral Thompson and Lena went to Russia for the right reasons. They went to teach colleagues, to advance medicine, um, but it ended up with some undesired consequences. It brings Alexander and Dr. Joe, and their paths cross in ways that would not have been possible if they weren't in Alexander's country, if they weren't in Russia.
Mm.
Even though Dr. Joe and Alexander never meet in the book, Alexander is able to reach out and touch Joe, if you will, in ways that couldn't have happened if Joe weren't in Alexander's backyard. And then, of course, there's the other discovery that's made during the book that that references the Bolshevik Revolution, which is how the book starts.
There's a scientific sleuthing, a medical know-how, and a lot of luck when you plan the mystery. What rules did you set for yourself so the breakthroughs felt earned?
Well, the scientific sleuthing, once again, is based on root cause analysis of, if you had something happen that you weren't expecting, how would you go about investigating from a clinical medical standpoint? So again, that part was easy. But I also have a background in fraud, waste, and abuse on the business side of healthcare. And, following through on how we went about those investigations also was Yeah, it was easy to write about.
Mm, okay. Um, you've said the medical scenarios are accurate and the Russia scenes are real. What was the most important for you to get exactly right for credibility?
Well, as I said, I wanted to make sure that if somebody picked up the book who was familiar with any of these aspects, that they would say, yeah, that's right. He's that's accurate. He's doing it right. Um, because once, as I think you mentioned earlier, if your audience, if your reader starts to doubt your credibility, you lose them. You lose
True.
they lose interest in the story. It becomes just another fantasy tale. So I wanted this to have enough reality, enough accuracy that it could be truly believable.
Mm. Now, without giving away the ending, what do you hope a reader feels when they close the book? Would you want them to be more vigilant, more hopeful, more angry, more determined, or something else?
Well, first of all, I wrote this as entertainment. So at the end of the book, I want the reader to go, yes, justice. Um, so that's the overwhelming reaction that I'd like the reader to have. Um, that the
And
good
that's
guys
what
won't.
that's what I felt. That's what I felt. That's what I felt. And it's a good thing. I mean, there are stories that leaves you hanging, right? Stories well, at the onset of the book, you so well know that um might be guessing that it's not going to have a very good ending, and by good meaning you won't get the satisfaction that you're supposed to get, and that's just how the writer would want you to feel, and they succeed in doing that, and that's a nice thing. Another thing that I noticed with your book is that it kept me guessing, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like hard because you will always have that reader's bias, or you paint a picture of these characters and the storyline and the flow of the story, and you're following them, and somehow it make you ask questions, or it makes you assume like, I think this is what's going to happen next, but there's a plot twist, and that's what's always nice about reading well-written books, when it's like, what, that's not what I thought that's going to happen. Well, that's different. That's how can that happen? So I kind of like that feeling when you're reading a book, when you're guessing, when you're always guessing. And I like guessing because it's nice when your assumptions are correct. When you find out that your assumptions are correct.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very flattered that I was able to create that sensation, because it's certainly what I was going for. Um, I didn't want it to, just be a straight line of a story. I wanted it to have twists and turns. And um, the fun of this is that Dr. Joe Lena and Mike Thompson are going to be characters in the next book.
So there's a sequel.
So this is going to um, the adventures continue.
All right, that's a good thing. That's good news. I'm now to my last question, but before I do so, where can interested viewers and listeners get a copy of your book, Coded?
Barnes and Noble, Amazon, or going directly to the publisher's website, which is Archway, um, which is which may be the most efficient, effective way to go ahead and do it.
All right. So we'll make sure to provide links of these websites where you can grab a copy of Dr. Dave's book coded. Now, I have a
Thank you.
respectful challenge question for you. So, if
Okay.
you could recode one part of the real healthcare system, one policy, incentive, or blind spot to better protect patients and reward honest care, what would you change? And what do you think it would cost, like personally or professionally, to actually make that change?
Wow. Um, I think what I personally would like to see happen in healthcare is number one, and this is kind of my soapbox, um, for folks to take more accountability. And to do that, you need to set the guardrails. Um, you need to struct, structure the system in such a way that people are rewarded for making the right decisions, rewarded for decisions um, that are healthy, and perhaps have the consequences of the decisions that they make that we know are not healthy. I would never take personal choice away. If you want to, you know, pursue these activities, by all means, but you have to understand that there are consequences, and our healthcare system cannot continue to pay for these consequences which you take on voluntarily. So I'd love to see a system that rewards positive health behaviors.
Dr. Dave, such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for being our guest today in this particular episode. Thank you for discussing your book with us.
Well, Ray, this has been a real pleasure for me. The whole process of writing and publishing the book was so exciting, and I love to see people's responses. I'm really very flattered. It's very rewarding, and thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to sit here with you and share some thoughts.
It was short but sweet, but I want to squeeze this one in just before we close this show.
Okay.
What's the nicest feedback you've received so far about your book?
Well, certainly from other doctors who have said that it's accurate. Um, and again, my response is, well, of course it's accurate, but also from friends of mine who have read the book who said, you know, you really wanted to make you really made me feel like I wanted to turn the page. At the end of a chapter, I felt I really wanted to keep going, and if I can create that and that experience, then I'm gratified.
Right. There's this, when you're reading a book and it's quite a good one, there's always this sad feeling upon knowing that you're down to the last couple of pages of the book.
I know that's so true, and that you're going to have to wait a year for the next one. But there will be a next one.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Dr. David J. San, thank you so much for your time, Doctor. Pleasure talking to you today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Take care. Be well.
All right. I also want to give a big shout out to our awesome viewers and listeners for joining us for this interview. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations on the Author Roundup. I'm Ray Walters. Join me next time as we explore the world of supported self publishing, one indie author at a time.